Watch this.
Dozens of cargo ships stuck at sea as ports struggle to offload in a timely manner. And that backlog is now affecting our school districts and how they serve lunch. Less than 3 weeks out from Election Day, and a new election law means your ballot may not have as many races on it. Why is this the case? We'll explain. 18 months into the pandemic, 6 weeks operating under crisis standards of care, and there's no end in sight. Our healthcare workers are exhausted. We're going to tell you how you can help. Continues to make national headlines. You've probably seen this: supply chain disruptions at our coastal ports. The main reason? Labor shortages from shippers to receivers all across the board. Dozens of ships just waiting to get into the port to be unloaded, and those ships carrying everything from sporting goods to technology, even household goods. And President Joe Biden says he is attempting to fix the disruptions by opening the Port of Los Angeles 24/7. Combined, those two California ports can handle 40% of container traffic that comes into the country when operating 24/7. But the problem won't get fixed overnight, and major retailers predict this will continue into next summer, unfortunately. As we mentioned, though, this is impacting almost everything, like food, which is getting harder and harder to order and getting more and more expensive. And because of that, school districts right here in Idaho, they're being forced to change up their menus and also having to work quickly to find new solutions to feed their students. Here's our Katya Stepovic.
Cheeseburgers, tater tots, grapes.
That's what's on the menu today at West Middle School in Nampa.
There you go.
At West Middle School, odds are Pam Harbiston will plate your lunch.
Are you smiling at your teachers?
She's only been doing it for 24 years.
Have a good day.
But this year for her is not so good.
I have never seen this before. It is hard, and it hits to home.
She's talking about the global supply chain and the impact that it has in her kitchen and on what she plates for lunch every day.
This whole school year, we started out going, okay, we can't get this, we can't get that, we can't get this. My bosses struggle to get food, and so say today is green beans, but they can't get green beans, and we have to shuffle around to find food. It is scary. It is scary when you can't feed the kids.
Pam isn't the only one who's never had to be concerned about wrangling food for kids.
Something that our central warehouse is out of is some frozen vegetables, and that's kind of universal. The kitchen still had some because they had a little stockpile in their little local freezers, but once those are gone, we're looking at serving fresh. And as we mentioned earlier, some of the fresh stuff's actually hard to get now.
Peter Juris, the executive director of operations for the Nampa School District, says while quantities have gone down, prices have gone up.
Like a 45% increase on grains, so flours, those kinds of things. Our foam trays that we saw served today is a 50% cost increase.
Juris says the district is lucky enough to have a central warehouse for now, but he worries if that will be enough if things don't change.
If people start hoarding, that could exacerbate the issues very quickly, and I think that's a reality of something there. We're trying to only buy the product that we know that we're going to use, but we're trying to plan that we can get through the school year.
And let's not forget about why there is a supply chain issue to begin with.
The staffing to feed the kids. Do we have enough folks to do that? And today is a good example of me being out in the kitchen to help with that. The fact is we have enough staff to kind of get the kids the meals, but once we start having an absence or 2 or 3, it gets pretty difficult to provide the level of service that we really need to do to be successful. When are we going to wear the group of people in the supply chain out because they're working 80-hour weeks or 60-hour weeks or whatever it is, to where they start leaving and finding jobs where they don't have to do that. That's my fear in the kitchens here.
Okay, there you go.
But for Pam, she's here to stay, regardless of what's on tomorrow's menu.
I love the kids, and it's important to me to feed them and feed them good food. Not just any food, but good food. Okay, have a good day, guys.
Katya, you mentioned the Nampa School District in that story. I'm assuming it extends far beyond Nampa.
Absolutely, and I would argue across the entire country. And Boise School District actually reached out to me. They said they're experiencing the very same thing. And I want to read a statement from them. They said, starting October 4th, we simplified our school menus to reflect what is reliably available to purchase until the nationwide supply chain starts functioning once again. Now, those changes include fewer entree choices, one lunch entree choice per day in elementary, 2 lunch entrees in secondary, and also more repetition, obviously, because there are fewer items in their inventory. So this is an issue across the country, and they're just hoping it doesn't get worse before it gets better.
Do they have a plan if it does get worse? I mean, can they run out of food, or do they have something in storage?
I mean, they have, this Nampa School District at least, they have their own storage, luckily, so they're set up until January, but that's not the case for some smaller charter schools that are probably in a troublesome situation.
We'll have to continue to track this because that's a big deal if kids cannot get lunch at school. A lot of kids, the only meal they could get sometimes is at school, so we'll keep an eye on that. Thank you, Katya. Well, turning the page now, when the school year started back in August, nearly 1/3 of West Ada's 40,000 students opted out of a district-wide mask requirement. It was quickly revoked, though, as cases within the district spiked and hundreds of students were forced to be quarantined because of exposures to COVID. So on September 24th, the Board of Trustees voted to require masks for all students and staff, regardless if they had already opted out or not. And that decision has since been extended 3 separate times. During last night's special board meeting of trustees, who did not take in-person public comment, but they did hear from Russ Duke, who's the chair of the Central District Board of Health, and he talked about the state of COVID in our community. And Duke encouraged the board to continue universal indoor masking for everyone, from schools to companies. However, under a new Idaho law, public health districts cannot issue mask mandates for school districts.
Public health districts, our Board of Health, cannot issue a mask mandate for a public school district, period. If we did a universal, like everybody in Ada County must wear a mask indoors, the way I would interpret the law, not an attorney, that wouldn't apply to school districts because we're prohibited from implementing any types of restrictions for school districts.
My frustration is that we are, again, this is on schools, this is on the backs of kids, to be the protectors of the community.
So after a nearly 4-hour meeting last night, the trustees decided to go ahead and again extend that mask mandate themselves. However, they said that they would reconsider the mandate down the road if one of a number of things does happen. COVID vaccines are approved for kids age 5 to 11, community spread in Ada County falls to a moderate level, or if both St. Luke's and St. Alphonsus hospitals in the Treasure Valley move out of crisis standards of care. The trustees also voted to opt out of contact tracing, which has proven to be very, very difficult with over 30,000 students in the district. Instead, West Ada says they will now notify all parents and students from classrooms when a positive case is confirmed there. So how are our kids doing with COVID lately? Some good news to share, at least in terms of hospitalizations for you. The number of kids with COVID in Idaho who are hospitalized, that number continues to go down. You can see that we hit our peak back on October 2nd with 15 kids hospitalized across the state on that day. As of this past Monday, that number has dropped to only 6 patients. We should also point out, though, that Idaho has recorded 0 COVID deaths for anyone under the age of 18 years old. And we're going to show you a look right now at all the hospitalizations across the state of Idaho. You can also see that we are starting to trend downwards. It's encouraging news. We hit our peak back on September 24th, 793 people in the hospital. But as of this past Monday, that number has nearly dropped by 150 people. However, we are still higher than we were during last winter's peak, so we do still have some work to do in the near future. Hard to believe, but Election Day is fast approaching. But before you head out, make sure you actually have something on your ballot to vote on. A new law could drastically change what does and does not show up on your ballot. Before you head to the polls, make sure to text us your questions. Here's our number, which you can text us at any point of the day or night, whenever you want. 208-321-5614. Make sure to include your name and hashtag the 208. No questions? Feel free to drop us a comment too. We're going to share a few at the end of the show. Two common complaints about the government, and these are common complaints, not mine specifically, but two common complaints. They waste time and they waste money. And I'm sure I'm not the first person to highlight those comments. We see it pretty regularly in your feedback into the show, actually. But when it comes to elections in Idaho, lawmakers actually addressed those concerns last year. So a 2020 law many forgot about is now coming in handy and likely saving you money and time. Here's how. This Idaho law will soon save everyone time and taxpayer dollars during the upcoming November election.
It allows the county clerk to not put a race on the ballot if it is an uncontested race, for example, for mayor or for a city councilman.
Chad Houck is Chief Deputy Secretary of State. He explains that the law only covers up to city elections, not beyond it for things like statewide races. Houck says there are two main benefits that come with the law, tailored to avoid unnecessary elections, like when someone is running against nobody else. First, he says, there are financial benefits.
Reduces the cost, reduces the time needed to administer the election. If you're in a hand count county, it's one less tabulation process to have to go through for getting those numbers in, and ultimately reduces the cost of administering that election for the county clerks.
Houck points out, for example, that fewer ballot items means less on ballot and printing costs. Fewer ballot items can also promote better voter engagement, he says.
Fewer things that are on the ballot. We know that there's such a real thing as ballot fatigue. The further you go down the ballot, the less likely a voter is to participate in those ballot questions that are towards the tail end of the ballot.
You may be wondering, what about write-in candidates? Does this effectively exterminate that option? The short answer is no, and it's important to mention that write-in candidates in Idaho do need to go through a registration process ahead of an election to have votes counted for them. Houck says the law addresses all of that.
It actually very specifically addresses write-in candidates. In fact, the bill states that after the passing of the deadline for registering as a write-in candidate, registering for a write-in candidate is a statutory requirement. It happens after the declaration of candidacy, but before the deadlines when the ballots are actually printed and go out the door. And that's so that only registered write-in candidates that have had an opportunity for the county clerks to evaluate their ability to serve in that office, meeting the qualifications of that office, are allowed to receive votes functionally on election day, should they actually win that particular contest.
The concept the law accomplishes applied to lower-level elections previously, but again, it will now extend to city elections, but not beyond them.
This does not apply anywhere above that city threshold. It doesn't get up into any of our partisan elections. We still utilize in a partisan office like the legislature or like our constitutional offices. If one should be uncontested, you'd still see that there. That's more of a keeping in track with the primary and general system that we don't have in the municipal or city elections.
So what does all this look like in practice? Well, we can tell you already. In Camas County, for example, it appears right now that only one of their ballot items will actually make the ballot in Camas County, and you may get a different ballot depending on where you live. There's 4 items, though, in total for some voters to consider. Again, only one of those may appear on the ballot because a lot of the races, uncontested, means only one person running for one seat. Now, in the event that someone runs unopposed and it doesn't make the ballot, the winner still gets formally declared as the winner with an election certificate. They've been our frontline heroes for 18 months, now under more stress thanks to crisis standards of care. We're going to tell you how you can help make the day of an Idaho healthcare worker. What other questions do you have for the 208 team? Feel free to text us anytime. 208-321-5614. Just make sure to include your name in the hashtag the 208. If we don't answer your question at the end of the show today, don't worry. We may use it during a future show, so stay tuned. Yesterday, we showed you just a few pictures of how some people in our community have reached out to our hospitals to show their appreciation. And after all, October is Healthcare Appreciation Month in Idaho, as declared by the governor. Well, shortly after yesterday, I received a great email from one of you this week. A gentleman wrote to me telling me that he went and rounded up a lot of goodies and treats for frontline healthcare workers to go to the hospital with and donate. And we love to hear that, but there was a slight problem. Because of hospital policies, the hospital he went to was unable to accept his gift as he had hoped. And that's because of COVID policies. And of course, those are crucial and we respect those, but it was unfortunate for this man. He did, however, go to a local food bank and donate all the goodies there, which is great, but we felt a little bad. Maybe the situation is partially our fault because we have been encouraging the community to go out and do what they can to help out frontline healthcare workers at major area hospitals like St. Luke's and St. Alphonsus. But to be honest, both of those hospitals, they're overwhelmed with the response from the community. And to highlight that, these are just some of the gestures that St. Alphonsus says that they have seen in recent days and weeks. They say a number of different organizations and nonprofits, as well as just individuals in the community, well, they've generously shared their appreciation in a variety of different ways, including handwritten thank you signs, cookies, balloons, even opening up tabs in the cafeteria for workers to enjoy a free meal. Even LaCroix. Everyone loves LaCroix, right? Now, all of that is, of course, appreciated. But as we've told you for weeks, the scene at our hospitals is very hectic right now. So they really don't have a lot of extra hands to go out and do intake for gifts and other goodies. They're very busy. But with that said, if you are interested in donating or dropping off anything ahead of time, we want to make sure we note this. Make sure that you're coordinating with the medical system or the hospital or wherever you want to send your generous donation. The whole thing will make it a lot easier in the end. And also, I can tell you for a fact, St. Alphonsus and St. Luke's, if you go online and you just search COVID donation with either hospital, they have a webpage set up right now. You can give digitally and tell them what you want them to do with that money. It's just a lot simpler for our hospitals right now. It's not that they don't appreciate what's being done in the community, but we're going to streamline it for them.
Good to know, Joe. Now let's take a look at some of the temperatures here. As you can see, it's 55 degrees in Boise, and in Nampa, the temperature is 57. Let me move out of the way. McCall, 40. Nice day in Haley today. They have sunshine of 46 and then 47 degrees for Twin Falls. Now, in the way of high temperatures, as you can see here, highs for tomorrow, it's warming up quite a bit. So these are the forecast highs tomorrow. 66 for Ontario, 64 for Boise, Twin Falls with 60 degrees. Most of the mountains are in the 40s as well as in the 50s. It's not a surprise because what we've been talking about in the forecast, it's going to warm up. So the BSU versus Air Force. Now this is 7 o'clock Saturday. Many of you might be there, 63 degrees at Albertson Stadium. So 63, we're bringing the temperature up because the highs actually that afternoon could get pretty close to 70 degrees. So in the 7-day forecast, you notice 36 will be the low temperature for tomorrow morning. That's different than the 32 we had this morning. Still cold, but we're at 36. 64 will be the high for tomorrow afternoon. As you get to Saturday, you see 70. Sunday will be 69 degrees. So the weekend right now will have high temperatures that are pretty close to 70 degrees. We have a weak storm system for Monday. Showers are mainly in the mountains. It's very slight down here in the valley, but I just indicated that. It drops our temperature to 56. Then next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, look at these highs. They get into the 60s. As you look at the Magic Valley, tomorrow it's 58 degrees. In Twin Falls, highs over the weekend will be in the mid-60s. And then you can see Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. Monday it drops, but as you get into next week, some of those highs will be back to the mid-60s. So the 10-day temperature trend. As we look ahead to next Thursday, these temperatures are starting to come up. But enjoy this weekend at 71 because as you can see, the temperatures start to drop next Saturday and Sunday down into the lower 60s and possibly even into the upper 50s. Thank you. That's your weather forecast.
It has been a part of Basque culture in Idaho for decades, herding sheep from southern Idaho all the way to the Wood River Valley, and then of course back again. All on foot, by the way. About 25 years ago, some sheep herders ran into a problem though. A new community bike path was installed along a portion of their usual journey. Long story short, the bike path users weren't crazy about having to share with the sheep. So Diane and John Pavey, sheep ranchers in the area, they invited a few community members to join them as they herded their sheep through town. And that one simple walk has since morphed into the iconic Trailing of the Sheep Festival. Every fall, 1,500 sheep make their way from the Wood River Valley down to southern Idaho for the wintertime. Hundreds, if not thousands to be honest, of people line the streets of downtown Ketchum to watch the migration live and to hear stories from local sheep herders and ranchers. It's very exciting. Now, that festival happened this past weekend, so if you weren't able to go, we understand, but we wanted to share these amazing pictures with you. I gotta tell you, one of the most interesting things about that is when the sheep are going through town, it's silent. Like, there's hundreds of people up and down the street, but it's silent because they don't want anybody to spook all the sheep out there. And also, I just want to shout out the Border Collies who do an amazing job out there controlling all the sheep through town. And of note, you may know this, there's a similar event that happens in the spring. That's when the sheep are headed back up to the Wood River Valley, usually around mid-April. You can see all the sheep cross the road over in the Eagle area along Highway 55. It's a great little treat if you wander into it. End of the show, you know what it is. Let's get to some comments here. This person says, I feel for the lack of food variety for Idaho schools, but I do remember surviving the 1950s with only one hot lunch choice in Idaho public schools. Just saying, Steve. You're right, Steve. We can survive with only one option, but it is nice to give the kids a little more options. There's a theme here. A lot of people want to say, is Brian okay? Joe's great, but Brian, where is he? Thanks for the great comments. This person says, where's Brian Holmes? This person says, where's Brian Holmes? I miss him. Guess what? I miss him too. I think he went up on the Blue Origin spacecraft. I hope he's coming down to Earth soon. I'm told he should be back next week. Just kidding. He's on vacation.